Well, to take us through the concerns, we're joined by veterinarian Bronwyn Orr. Bronwyn, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, increasingly, this is the way people are buying their pets. What are the concerns doing it online?
Yeah, so it does seem to be an increasing trend, and if European trends are anything to go by, it might actually become the most popular way that people buy pets in the future. So there are some very serious animal welfare concerns we have about this, and namely, it's that if you buy an animal online without having met it first, you might inadvertently be supporting puppy farms or unscrupulous breeders because you don't actually see where it was bred and you've never met itself or its mother. There's obviously also animal welfare concerns to do with the long distances that these animals are sometimes transported. So we do have quite a few concerns about these.
So you're saying buyer beware. Your advice essentially then what is to try to be in the situation where you can at least meet or see the pet physically before you actually commit to buying it?
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously we use the internet for all sorts of things these days, and there's no reason that you can't use it to potentially find your future pet. However, there's nothing better than meeting your pet in person before you buy it. And so we always say don't buy sight unseen. Actually make the effort to go to the breeder or the new owner and meet your animal in person.
Are there any other ways around that? Because there would be some people, particularly as far as seeking a rare breed is concerned, would say, well, it might only be available interstate. And the cost of actually travelling there to look over the pet before committing to buying it is prohibitive. Therefore, they're more likely to buy it online, sight unseen.
Yeah, so there's certainly a small percentage of the market who are looking for a particular breed, who might be in that difficult situation of being in a state where there's no breeders. However, I would still really say if you can make the effort to meet that animal, a lot of these rare breeds do actually go for quite a bit of money. On Gumtree you can buy a French Bulldog for $7,000. So that's not chump change, and if you're going to be spending that much money on a particular breed, we recommend going and actually visiting its mother and where it was bred.
And is there any recourse for buyers if they end up buying a pet and perhaps the dog or the cat may have some congenital condition or other disease that they're not aware of?
So obviously pets are subject to the same consumer guarantees as other goods, so you can get a refund or a replacement. But as soon as you start talking about animals, it does get really tricky because they're not the same as electronics or clothing that might have a defect and you just send it back. People fall in love with these animals. So in reality, the consumer protections do apply the same. However, when you take this animal on board and you might be up for very expensive veterinary fees to fix some of these defects, usually you can't claim those fees back. So it is a very awkward situation, and hence we do recommend to kind of do your due diligence and really make sure what you're buying is a healthy, happy animal.
And on the flip side is the concern from sellers, those perhaps breeding, that they're going to owners that will care for the pet in the way that they would like.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of breeders do it because they absolutely love their dogs and their breed. And, they would be just as concerned about who was potentially going to be taking this animal on board, particularly, as I mentioned before, some of the more expensive pedigrees, people might be taking them on to then breed and make a profit. So it's in the best interest of both the seller and the buyer to actually physically meet in person and to see the animal in person.
Another way, of course, perhaps in the past the most popular way was going to a pet store to buy a pet. Are there also concerns about animals that feature in pet stores and perhaps their history?
Yeah, so pet stores obviously, they're the equivalent of a third party. So you're not buying directly from the breeder or the owner, you're buying it through a retailer. So very similar to online selling. But obviously the difference with a pet store is it is actually a physical entity. Depending on the state you're in, it might be subject to checks from animal welfare organisations. But we've seen in the past through RSPCA raids that, pet stores can also be selling these puppy farmed animals, so they're not necessarily the answer either. There is nothing better than going and meeting the breeder and meeting your future animal.
And unfortunately, Bronwyn, we're still seeing a lot of pets dumped, I guess particularly after Christmas and the like, where pets are given away as presents. They end up in in rescue shelters and the like. Are you seeing those numbers increase at all?
So we actually don't see a surge of dumped or relinquished animals after Christmas, and there has been a bit of research on it, and it has actually shown that there isn't an associated surge. And we've actually changed our messaging a little bit because if you think about the Christmas and New Year period, that's often a week where most people are home with their families, and it's kind of a perfect time to bring an animal home because you're actually there to spend time with it. But as with everything, an animal should never be given as a surprise gift. It should always be with lots of planning and thought, and you should be prepared to take on this animal.
Bronwyn Orr, some good advice. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Some very good advice there, but I have to confess I was distracted by the cute pictures of cats and dogs there.
I haven't asked you.